You're exhausted, but you can't sleep. Surrounded by people but completely alone. You know you should care, but you just don't anymore. That's not depression, and it's not laziness. That's your mind executing an emergency shutdown protocol. Most people don't realize what's happening until the damage is already done. What you're experiencing has a name, a mechanism, and a predictable pattern of destruction that touches your body, your mind, and every relationship you care about. If you clicked on this video at 2 a.m. when you should be sleeping, well, we both know why you're here. So let's talk about what's actually going on inside you, because tired doesn't begin to cover it. There's this moment that happens to people who are emotionally exhausted. It's not dramatic, doesn't announce itself with a breakdown or a crisis. It's quieter than that. You're standing in your kitchen, maybe, or sitting in your car after work, and you realize you can't remember the last time you felt like yourself. Not the version of yourself that performs fine at work, not the one that says, "I'm good, just tired," when people ask. The actual you, the one who used to care about things, get excited about things, feel things without effort, that version feels like a stranger now. Here's what makes this insidious. You're still functioning. From the outside, you might even look successful. You show up, you complete tasks, you hold conversations. But there's this growing distance between what your face is doing and what's happening inside. You smile at work while feeling hollow. You say you're fine while something is clearly, obviously, not fine. And the exhaustion isn't the kind that sleep fixes. You've tried sleeping. You've tried weekends. You've tried that vacation everyone told you to take. The tiredness is still there when you wake up, like it's become part of your operating system. What I want you to understand is that this experience you're having is real, documented, and far more common than you think. It's not a personal weakness, and it's not a failure to cope. To understand what's actually happening, we need to name it properly. Emotional exhaustion isn't a mood. It's a state of resource depletion. Think of your emotional capacity like a bank account. Every demand on you makes a withdrawal. Every interaction where you have to manage your feelings, perform patience, suppress frustration, show enthusiasm you don't feel. Recovery, support, rest, meaning, those are deposits. Emotional exhaustion happens when the withdrawals exceed the deposits for so long that you're operating in a permanent deficit. Unlike financial debt, you can't declare bankruptcy and start over. The debt lives in your nervous system. This is different from being tired after a hard week, and it's different from stress. Stress is what you feel when demands are high, but you believe you can meet them. Exhaustion is what happens when demands stay high, and your capacity to meet them has been fundamentally compromised. Research shows that emotional exhaustion acts as a pathway, a mediator between work demands and everything that falls apart afterward. Nearly 60% of the relationship between what your job asks of you and how your health declines runs directly through emotional exhaustion. It's the mechanism of collapse. And that collapse doesn't stay in one dimension. When emotional exhaustion takes hold, it reaches into your body and your mind simultaneously, and everything starts to fall apart at once. Here's what makes emotional exhaustion so devastating. It doesn't just drain your feelings, it collapses 3 systems at the same time, and they reinforce each other as they fall. The first dimension is emotional. Your capacity to feel starts to flatten. Things that used to bring joy feel neutral. Things that should bring sadness feel distant. You become disconnected from your own emotional life, watching your reactions like they're happening to someone else. Empathy, which might have been one of your greatest strengths, starts to erode because you simply don't have the resources to feel other people's feelings anymore. The second dimension is physical. Your body starts sending distress signals. Chronic fatigue that sleep doesn't touch, headaches, muscle tension that lives in your shoulders, your jaw, your back. Your immune system weakens. You catch everything going around. Your cardiovascular system responds to the constant stress by pushing your blood pressure higher, your heart working harder than it should. The third dimension is mental. Your cognitive capacity diminishes. You forget things you shouldn't forget. You can't concentrate the way you used to. Decision-making becomes harder, and processing information takes more effort. You're working with less brain power while often facing the same or greater demands. These 3 collapses don't happen in sequence. They happen together, each one making the others worse. Physical exhaustion amplifies emotional depletion. Cognitive decline makes everything require more effort. It's a system failure, not a single point of breakdown. And there's a specific behavior that accelerates all three of these collapses. Chances are, you're doing it right now. Every day, you put on a performance. You regulate your face, your voice, your body language to match what's expected rather than what you feel. You smile at customers when you're frustrated. You project calm when you're overwhelmed. You perform enthusiasm for projects you stopped caring about months ago. This is called surface acting, and it's wearing you down faster than the actual work. Here's the counterintuitive truth that research has revealed. Faking positive emotions depletes you more than genuinely feeling negative ones. When you experience real frustration or real sadness at work, it's draining, but authentic. When you fake being fine while actually falling apart, you're running two processes simultaneously. Feeling what you actually feel while also performing the opposite, that double load is exhausting in a way that authentic emotion isn't. It gets worse. When your outer expression contradicts your inner experience repeatedly, something called emotional dissonance builds up. You start to feel alienated from yourself. There's the you that exists inside and the you that everyone else sees, and they become strangers to each other. This alienation is the hidden cost of professionalism, of service work, of any job that requires you to be pleasant regardless of how you feel. And it's not equally distributed. Healthcare workers, teachers, customer service representatives, anyone whose job requires managing other people's emotional experiences pays this tax constantly. The solution your company offers is probably a lunchtime yoga class. Sure, that'll fix it. But your body doesn't care about yoga classes. Your body has been keeping track of the debt. Let me give you some numbers that should alarm you. People with emotional exhaustion have a 180% higher risk of developing depressive disorders. Not 18%, 180. The risk of type 2 diabetes increases by 84%. Hypertension, cardiovascular strain, metabolic dysfunction, all of these climb significantly when you're emotionally depleted. Your body isn't just feeling tired, your body is breaking down. The sleep problems deserve special attention. Emotionally exhausted people experience a specific pattern of sleep disturbance. You're exhausted but wired, tired but unable to quiet your mind. You might fall asleep but wake at 3 a.m. with your thoughts racing through every unfinished task, every interaction you handled wrong, every problem you can't solve. The sleep you do get isn't restorative. You wake up as tired as when you lay down. Your body has been sending you signals for months. The headaches you blamed on dehydration, the muscle tension you thought was just posture, the fatigue you attributed to getting older, the irritability you excused because of everything going on. People who reach advanced emotional exhaustion are 57% more likely to take extended sick leave. Not because they're taking mental health days, because their bodies eventually force the issue. What the mind refuses to acknowledge, the body eventually makes undeniable. Here's the cruel part. Your body knew something was wrong long before your mind admitted it, and the body keeps score even when we're not counting. And while your body was sending signals, your mind was under its own assault. That thing where you walk into a room and forget why you're there. That thing where you read the same paragraph 3 times without absorbing it. That thing where words you've used your whole life suddenly aren't available when you need them. That's not aging, and that's not distraction. That's your cognitive capacity being compromised by emotional exhaustion. Short-term memory impairment is one of the early warning signs, but it's rarely recognized for what it is. You blame it on stress, on multitasking, on too much screen time. But the pattern is consistent. Emotionally exhausted people experience measurable decline in cognitive function. Concentration becomes harder. Processing information requires more effort, and tasks that used to be automatic now require conscious attention. Then there's the productivity paradox. You notice yourself becoming less effective, so you try to compensate by working harder, working longer, spending more hours to produce the same output you used to generate easily. But working harder when you're cognitively depleted doesn't increase output. It accelerates decline. Error rates increase even when you're paying closer attention. You miss things you would have caught before. Your creativity and innovation capacity decrease because those require cognitive surplus you no longer have. You're operating with a reduced brain, trying to meet demands designed for your full capacity. Want to level up your people skills? Join our community on YouTube or on my Patreon for exclusive scripts, early access, and connection with people who get the social struggle. Links below. Let's master human interaction together. Your mental decline is real, measurable, and not imagined. And it's not a character flaw. When both your body and mind are compromised like this, your emotional system does something strange. It doesn't just break down, it protects you. Here's something that might shift how you see yourself. That numbness you feel, that inability to care about things you used to care about, that sense of being emotionally flat, that isn't your emotions breaking down. It's your psyche executing an emergency shutdown protocol. Your mind decided that feeling everything was going to destroy you, so it didn't destroy your capacity to feel. It hid it. Think about what you were probably like before this. Many emotionally exhausted people started out with high empathy. They felt other people's pain, absorbed the emotions of everyone around them. They cared deeply, maybe too deeply, about doing things well and helping others. That level of emotional engagement became unsustainable in conditions without adequate support. So your mind, in its brutal wisdom, converted that hypersensitivity into numbness. It's not that you stopped caring, it's that caring was costing more than you had. The cynicism you might have developed works the same way. You weren't born cynical. You grew cynicism like scar tissue over repeated wounds. It's a psychological defense mechanism, not a personality trait. Every time you made yourself vulnerable to caring and got burned, your mind took notes, and eventually it built walls. The numbness feels like something is wrong with you, but it's not. It's something your mind did to keep you functional when full emotional engagement would have been overwhelming. Your feelings didn't go away. They went to voicemail and stopped checking messages. The problem is, those walls don't just keep out work. They keep out everyone. The people closest to you absorb what work takes out of you. This is one of the cruelest aspects of emotional exhaustion. The people who deserve the best of you often get what's left after everything else has taken its share. You come home depleted. The energy you had for meaningful connection has already been spent on customers, patients, colleagues, strangers. Your family gets the tired version, the irritable version, the version that wants to be left alone. And over time, that takes a toll that's difficult to repair. When you notice yourself falling behind, slipping, making more mistakes, taking longer to complete tasks, the instinct is to work harder, put in more hours, try more intensely, compensate for declining capacity with increased effort. This is like running faster to treat a broken leg. The thing you're doing to fix the problem is accelerating the damage. Here's why. Emotional exhaustion doesn't just drain your energy, it blocks your recovery pathways. The exhaustion itself prevents the behaviors that would help you recover. You're too tired to exercise, which would help. Too depleted to cook healthy food. Too exhausted to maintain the social connections that would restore you. Too drained to engage in hobbies that used to provide meaning. So you rest, but the rest doesn't work because passive rest isn't what you need. You need active recovery, restoration, support. And you're too exhausted to pursue any of it. The exhaustion prevents the recovery. That's a feedback loop, not a personal failure. The standard advice people give you is almost perfectly backwards. Have you tried meditation? Have you tried better sleep hygiene? Have you tried work-life balance? These are individual solutions to systemic problems. They assume you have a coping deficit when what you actually have is a resource depletion. No amount of deep breathing fixes understaffing. No bath bomb compensates for unreasonable workload. Self-care cannot repair systemic resource depletion. That's not a criticism of self-care. It's a recognition of scale. You're bailing water with a teaspoon while the organizational boat has a hole in it. And here's what makes this even more insidious. Individual burnout doesn't stay individual. When one person on a team is emotionally exhausted, something contagious happens. Burnout spreads. The exhausted person has less capacity for collegial support, so their teammates receive less help. They have less patience, so interactions become more tense. They make more errors, so others have to compensate, and their negativity, cynicism, and withdrawal become part of the team environment. Meanwhile, the people picking up their slack are experiencing increased workload, and increased workload leads to increased exhaustion. Soon you have 2 burned out team members, then 3. The remaining healthy workers face exponentially more pressure, and support networks that should buffer against burnout are themselves depleted. Presenteeism accelerates this spread. When exhausted workers show up physically but are mentally absent, they're not just unproductive, they're modeling burned out behavior, creating a permission structure for disengagement and sometimes actively infecting others with their cynicism. Organizations pay enormous cost for this. Turnover increases because people leave toxic environments. Productivity drops, error rates climb, reputation suffers. But these costs are often invisible because they're distributed and gradual rather than sudden and obvious. The support networks that would normally protect against individual burnout stop functioning when everyone is depleted. You can't get emotional support from a colleague who's also running on empty. Social protection requires surplus, and surplus is exactly what burnout eliminates. You can teach one person stress management techniques, but if they return to a depleted team in a toxic system, the intervention fails. The level of the problem determines the level of the solution. Now, before we talk about what actually helps, we need to clear something up, because what you're experiencing might not be what you think. Clinical burnout is a specific syndrome with specific characteristics. It's occupationally related, not life-related, and it involves the three-dimensional collapse we discussed: emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced efficacy, operating together over time. It doesn't resolve with a weekend off. Depression and burnout overlap significantly. They share symptoms like fatigue, concentration problems, and loss of interest. But burnout is specifically related to work demands, while depression is a broader condition that affects all life domains. Someone can have burnout that leads to depression, or depression that makes them more vulnerable to burnout. They're related, but distinct. Here's why this distinction matters. If you're experiencing general stress and you call it burnout, you might seek the wrong interventions. If you're experiencing depression and you call it burnout, you might avoid treatment that could help. If you're experiencing actual burnout and you dismiss it as just being stressed, you might underestimate how serious your situation is. The first thing that helps is recognizing what's happening early. The longer emotional exhaustion progresses, the harder it is to reverse. If you're catching this early, if you're reading the signals before complete collapse, your path back is shorter. But here's what the research clearly shows. Individual coping strategies matter less than organizational support. Your personal resilience is not the primary variable. The conditions you're working within are. This means that sustainable recovery often requires changes to those conditions, not just changes to how you manage your response to them. These aren't failures of coping. They're rational responses to impossible demands. Here's something surprising. Fun actually helps. Research shows that workplace enjoyment has a protective effect against emotional exhaustion. When people experience genuine fun at work, not forced team building but actual enjoyment, it modifies the negative impact of exhaustion. It's not frivolous, it's functionally protective. Professional counseling has documented benefits for burnout. Talking through what's happening with someone trained to help creates channels to process what you've been carrying alone. It's not a sign of weakness to seek help. It's a recognition that the problem has grown beyond what solo effort can address. Recovery isn't just about rest, it's about restoring what was depleted, and that requires active effort, support, and often systemic change. But there's one more thing I want to leave you with, because everything I've said means nothing if you walk away still blaming yourself. You're not broken, you're depleted. Those are different things. Broken implies something is wrong with you, that you were built incorrectly, that you're fundamentally flawed. Depleted means something was taken from you faster than it could be replaced. One is about who you are, the other is about what happened to you. The people who burn out are often the ones who cared the most, worked the hardest, held on the longest. They didn't fail at coping. They succeeded at giving until there was nothing left. Your cynicism isn't who you are. It's what chronic impossible demands turned you into, the scar tissue you grew over repeated wounds. Given different conditions, with adequate support and sustainable demands, you would not have grown those defenses. You're allowed to stop performing wellness you don't feel. You're allowed to be exhausted by things other people seem to handle fine. Their internal experience isn't visible to you, and neither is yours to them. Recovery requires more than deciding to feel better. It requires changes to what depleted you in the first place. Sometimes those changes are within your control. Sometimes they require support, advocacy, or exit. But whatever form recovery takes, it starts with believing you deserve to recover, that you matter enough to protect, that your well-being isn't a resource to be exploited until it's gone. The fact that you're here, that you watched this far, tells me something. It tells me you're still looking, still trying to understand, still hoping something can be different. That hope isn't naive. It's accurate. Things can be different, not through willpower alone, but through understanding, support, and changes that actually address the depletion. You didn't lose your passion. It was extracted from you without replacement. And extracting something isn't the same as destroying it. It can be restored, slowly, with the right conditions. You're not broken, you're depleted, and depleted things can be refilled. Learn something new? Hit that like button, share it with others, tap subscribe, and stick around for more. Got thoughts? I'd love to hear them in the comments. Learn something new? Hit that like button, share it with others, tap subscribe, and stick around for more. Got thoughts? I'd love to hear them in the comments.